Welcome to the Chain Effect Podcast, where a physical therapist and a dietitian married with 2 kids juggle the struggle of running a business, raising a family, and prioritizing our own health, all while trying to have as much fun as possible.
We're your hosts, Taylor Pope, Doctor of Physical Therapy, and
Caroline Pope, registered dietitian.
Together we own and operate a health facility bringing together physical therapists, dietitians, personal trainers, and active recovery services to create what we call the Chain Effect.
Chain Effect. Today, we are going to reevaluate goals, New Year goals, because we are almost halfway through the year. July will be kind of our midway point through the year. So we want to talk about reflecting on maybe New Year's goals, New Year's resolutions, and talk about some tips and tricks that we can use, we could all benefit from, to continue working on ourselves and having that growth mindset through the end of the year.
Yeah, and maybe you've been crushing your goals. Or maybe you forgot about them on January 8th. But whichever one it is, it's a great time to figure out like what's been working well, and what might still be in front of you as something that you want to tackle this year.
Yeah, what could you continue doing? Continue the trajectory.
Yeah.
Or maybe there's some new goals you want to make or modify some things. Like I saw recently, you started busting out MyFitnessPal again.
Yep, I'm back
tracking. You're like, I gotta track again.
I'm back to tracking, and you know what it is? It's for me. Tracking is that accountability piece, and just when I have to plug it in, it's like you're way too young to have ever balanced a checkbook. I'm sure, but. Right?
I never fully learned, but I know kind of what it is.
But when you had to balance a checkbook, then
I still write checks.
You had, the amount of money in your debit account, in your bank account, wasn't something that you could check at any time. So, you had, if you wanted to know what was in there, you had to go to the bank or call. It wasn't on a computer anywhere. So back in the day, you had to.
It's like having cash. That's why cash is nice.
I know, but you had to keep a balance. And then when you wanted to get a candy bar or something from the grocery store, you had to write it down and then subtract that amount from your total. And all of a sudden, you find that you have a lot more money because you start making decisions like, do I really want that?
Yeah.
How much do I want that? And that's the same thing with tracking in MyFitnessPal. So big proponent of, step one for a lot of, habit change, diet change is measuring and keeping accountability. I mean, you probably don't think it's step one, but step one for me is. Yeah,
for you. Well, the CGM was a big accountability. I mean, that was helpful for me to see what my body was actually doing with the food I was eating. Although a lot of it was healthy and, but it depended on the portion, depended on the order, depended on the time of day.
But if you want to go and listen to all about that, just check back a couple episodes.
Yes. So MyFitnessPal is great for you and has that accountability factor. But right now you're in prime training season.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why you're so motivated right now.
Right.
And wanting that accountability. For me, I don't really, we've talked about this before, but you're very extrinsically motivated. You have these goals to strive for, your team. You don't want to let your team down. You want to play your best.
I want to earn my playing time too. So that's a big thing.
And you want to feel your best working out and playing, getting as much play time as you can. And I'm more intrinsically motivated. So some of these, like MyFitnessPal doesn't really, I guess I don't feel the need to do that as much. Or it doesn't work as well for me.
And you're also just not competitive.
And I'm not, I have zero competition.
Yeah. So like you're not, doing this for anybody but yourself. And someone asked me like, who do you like to work out with? And I was listing like 3 or 4 different people that I like to work out with.
That wasn't me.
And then, well, you and I just don't ever get the chance to work out together because we're always with our children. But then they asked, who does Caroline work out with? And I was like, I think Caroline just likes working out by herself, like just being alone and like
I just go through the motions in my head. I'm like, what am I going to do? Okay, I don't want to have to talk about it with other people. Now I love being in a class format too, where I don't have to think and being around people. That's motivating. But yeah, I mean, and even in my competitive Irish dance days, and I say that in quotes because I never really liked competing.
Yeah,
isn't that weird?
Yeah,
it was a solo sport. When I had to go to all the competitions to raise my level, move higher and higher.
Put those giant wigs in, earn a bigger wig.
I love performing bigger trophies. Excuse you. But no, I loved the performance aspect, but yeah, I just to keep moving up levels, I had to go to some competitions and I didn't ever really love it. I just don't have the competitive side.
When Caroline and I first met, we talked about like things that we collected. And I was like, yeah, I collected basketball cards and comic books and piggy banks. And well, piggy banks is kind of weird, but I did collect piggy banks.
When you were real young.
Yeah, when I was real young. But I guess people kept buying them for me. So I kept collecting them. But I said, what did you collect growing up? And she said, medals and trophies. I was like, oh, okay.
So embarrassing. And I was probably thinking about my room, like, well, I guess all I had was a lot of medals and trophies. I don't know if I collected anything.
I mean, and that's so not your style. You're so not that sort of arrogant, egotistical person. But I think you just didn't. Your parents you never collected stamps or coins or
I don't know. I can't really think of anything.
Yeah. Anyway.
So discovering like if you're extrinsically versus intrinsically motivated, that some of these might hit, you a little bit more closely. But so tip number 1 is really identifying the bright spots. What has worked for you in the past? So thinking back earlier this year, maybe years in the past, first thinking about what has been successful with whatever goal you want. Whatever goal you're working on. And you maybe haven't felt like you've met your final goal because, I mean, what is our final goal? We're always on a pathway. Yeah. It's a journey.
It should be a moving goalpost, right?
We always are talking about growth mindset, moving goalpost. But so even it's not your final goal, but moving towards that, what have you improved or what has worked well in the past? Maybe it was tracking. Maybe it was getting a friend or family member involved or meeting with, someone. So think about that first. Maybe if it was like drinking more water, like what time of day works better for you? When do you actually remember that? And so that's tip number 1, thinking about what's worked in the past. And in our nutrition counseling sessions, we ask this too, like, have you ever worked with a dietitian before? Mm-hmm. What has worked well in the past? Mm-hmm. What hasn't? Because a lot of people might have just done diet type things, quick fixes, diets that don't work. But some people in the past have done other things that have worked. And they're like, yeah, I should probably go back to that, even though my life has changed. And that's a place to start. Like, okay, well, that's number 1. Let's try to do that. That might be the lower hanging fruit that you've been successful with in the past.
We ask that question all the time too in physical therapy. And, we encourage our trainers to do that too, because a lot of times the person that they worked with in the past maybe didn't have the same philosophy or just wasn't that good. Mm-hmm. And so you can get a lot of information from people as far as like, what were you prioritizing, during that time working with the personal trainer?
Or what didn't work.
Yeah, exactly. Like what hasn't worked for you in the past. And so I think evaluating, maybe you're not someone who's just highly motivated to go to the gym by yourself. That is okay. Mm-hmm. Know yourself. And, maybe you need to make that investment into yourself to hire a personal trainer, or maybe you've tried going the nutrition route by yourself, but you really didn't have anyone like keeping you accountable. Mm-hmm. And so it is okay. One of our tenets at Chain Effect is to know yourself, and knowing yourself means that you're okay admitting that, hey, I'm just not that good at that. So I'm going to outsource it.
Mm-hmm. And being proactive, like this time of year, it might be, it's warmer, there's more social stuff, eating, drinking alcohol is a lot harder to, limit. Like I know myself, I know this has been a problem spot in the past. Let me proactively think about going into this summer season with a plan of what's worked in the past, or I just know it's problematic. So thinking about that, thinking what's worked in the past and maybe what hasn't worked in the past.
Yeah. And I think, all right, so going like kind of moving sort of tangentially with that, thinking about this concept of your analytical self, your emotional self, and the environment around you. And there's a concept, I think, first introduced by Jonathan Haidt in his book, The Happiness Hypothesis, of an elephant being ridden down a path. Mm-hmm. And the rider is your analytical self, and the elephant is your emotional self, and the path is the environment. Mm. And our analytical self always knows what we should be doing, right? The rider's like, I know where we're supposed to go.
I know I shouldn't have this, but
I know I should steer ourselves in this direction. But the reality is, if the elephant doesn't want to go that direction, it doesn't matter how hard you're tugging on the rope. You're not going to change the course of the
you can't
elephant.
move that elephant.
Right? So you have to get the emotional side of yourself on board. And then you have just like this raging elephant, like running down the path, and there's nothing that's going to stop it. And so part of habit change and part of like getting your habits on track is appealing to your emotional side. And that happens when you've been working really hard and someone notices like, hey, you're looking really great. Or, hey, have you, lost weight? Or, hey, you're looking like you've put on some muscle. Like those are all things that can really appeal to the emotional side. So making sure you have a good support network, but also, rewarding yourself for the different milestones that you're doing and really being thoughtful about, like you said, finding the bright spots, analyzing, not just thinking about like what hasn't worked, but really thinking about and leaning into what has worked and trying to get that emotional side going. And third is the path. Obviously, if you're asking an elephant to like walk down like steaming hot asphalt or like, straight through a jungle, that's going to be a little bit difficult. But if you can like kind of clear a nice path, and you talk about this all the time, don't have food laying out on your countertops all day long.
Yeah.
That you have to walk by
for success.
Yeah. You have to walk by and make decisions like, no, I'm not going to eat that plate full of brownies. No, I'm not going to eat that plate full of brownies. And you're having to like say no over and over and over again. It just crushes
Who can resist like stuff that's laid out like in the staff break room, on your counter, things that you can control though. Like, hey y'all, let's put this up in the pantry. Let's hide this in a basket that I can't see.
And at our house, you have to put it, we have to hide stuff almost in a safe at this point.
Yeah, with a lock.
Like we have a couple little gymnasts like stacking things up. I saw Bennett like stack like 12 pillows up on a chair trying to climb up and get some marshmallows out of the top.
Oh my gosh, they know. Yeah, I put the little treats in a basket, or baking things, or chocolate chips, random things, sprinkles. Oh, they were up in the sprinkles.
Yeah,
the other morning, right?
So if you can get the rider knowing where you need to go, little tips and tricks, you're always going to have that really great plan. And it's almost like the rider is going to make the plan for you to work out in the morning. You're like, oh, I need to wake up at 5 a.m. and go do my workout. The emotional side of you is at 5 a.m. is going to say, oh my God, it feels so good in the covers here. Like I'm not getting
my room
up.
is so dark,
right?
and cozy.
And if you have to like go and get the clothes out of the cabinet or out of your dresser and put your shoes, but maybe if you have like the coffee going at 5 a.m., like you've programmed the coffee, so you're like smelling the coffee.
And laying out your shoes,
you lay out your
workout
shoes.
outfit. We talk about that a lot with patients. Like just have the less steps you have to go through. If you can just throw on your clothes, get your coffee and go out the door, the easier it's going to be. So set yourself up for success, whatever makes it easier for you and not have to use as much willpower.
That's right. And like being excited about like a podcast or a book that you're going to listen to while you exercise, that can be something that kind of ignites the emotional self. So I love that analogy, and I use it with a lot of my patients for trying to make habit change. If you can attack that elephant, if you can attack that environment, then you can really align things with where the rider wants to go.
And I do think that's important, rewarding yourself along the way, like not saying, okay, this is my end goal. I'm not going to reward myself or tap into my emotional self until I get that. It's like little points along the way.
Yeah.
Do things for yourself that help you stay motivated and tap into that emotional side.
Yeah, you got to love every day. Someone I think I saw today was saying, oh, only 3 days left or 2 days left. And I was like, until what? This was like 6:30 in the morning. He's like, oh, only 3 days left. He's like,
of what, the work week?
He's like, till the weekend. I was like, oh my gosh. Like if we really like spend all our time just thinking about, how many days left until the weekend, we are wasting so much of our life that we could be having fun. And I know that work is punishing for a lot of people. I know that like the day-to-day grind of your routine is punishing, but you have to find those bright spots and really find little bits of happiness every day. And if you don't have that in your life, you need to schedule it. You need to put it in the schedule.
Mental health can help you so much.
And for me, I have on the days I take our children to school drop off, those next like hour and a half, I just have blocked on my schedule for workouts. And so I make sure those days are scheduled, Tuesdays and Thursdays after drop off, boom, I'm going to work out. And that to me is like such a carrot when I wake up in the morning on those days. I'm like, yeah, I got to do all this stuff to like get ready to go. But then after drop off, it's like, boom, hour and a half to myself. I'm getting to work out, and I might do a yoga class, or I might go run sprints, or I might go lift weights. So what I do doesn't matter, but just having that time scheduled is huge for me.
Yeah. Tip number 3 is pretty straightforward, but accountability. Accountability is huge, and we can use this in a variety of ways. I mean, it could be hiring an expert, or investing in a program, or training sessions, or meeting with a dietitian, some sort of health professional, because it's not just information. Information is out there, and we know there's a lot of misinformation, but there's a lot of information that can be conflicting, confusing, and, you know, that individual self needs someone objectively to look at their life and what's going to help you. So having that person to speak with and counsel you through as a health professional can really, really help. And that's that accountability.
Yeah. And I think that's such a good point, what you said about objective, because I think how we see ourselves and how others see us is usually just a completely different picture. So, you know, having someone like look at our whole situation and really think about it from an expert point of view and like as fresh, unbiased, like objective information is so powerful, because they might just touch on something you said or something about what you've been doing and latch on to something that you didn't even think was important. But to them, it's like, oh, this is like the holy grail of what you need to be focusing on.
Yeah, and people are so hard on themselves. Like you hear this, I hear this. It's like, what? You're doing awesome. Yeah. Like you're doing that. That's great. And it's so good to hear that from a health professional. When you're feeling low about yourself or your progress in something. So hiring an expert or investing in a program can be huge for a lot of people. Another thing is using streaks. Or competitions in some way. But remember you had that running streak? Oh, yeah. A streak is just something you do every day, and you try not to break the streak. So like every day you're just like, okay, I'm going to, walk or walk. You did run a mile?
I did a few. So I've done tracking as a streak.
I've done, how many days in a row can I?
I've done a mile run as a streak, and I did 30 minutes of yoga as a streak.
Oh.
And I'll tell you, streaks are hard to get started, but once you get close to like 7-8 days in a row, you don't want to stop because you've like built it up. And, especially if you can set like, we always talk about like not being too hard on like setting goals, but if you can have like a milestone that you're working towards, maybe it's a 5K or like something you've put on the calendar, a vacation or something in the future that's kind of like, I want to see if I can do this all the way up until that point. Yeah. And like seeing, I think those streaks are super powerful.
That's why the apps are helpful too. It's like you've logged 30 days in a row and having that visual, and it could be, that could be a form of competition or accountability with a partner too. Cause I know you were running a mile with your friend. Y'all were always texting each other and both trying to run them. Oh, you bet on it. Okay. Well, that could help too. But with those public proclamations as well, like getting, if you follow each other on your Apple Watch or something, if you're seeing what other people's activity is, or if you just are stating to people, like hey, I'm going to do this. I signed up for this 5K. Or I'm signed up for this competition, or I am cutting this out, or I'm adding this in. And also thinking about adding things in as goals, not just cutting it out. That is a big psychological breakthrough that we try to do as dietitians. Like it's not all about cutting things out. It's what can I add in to my day, whether it's a habit or a food or a drink or something. But having those friendly competitions and making it public on your goal can really help your support system.
Yeah. And with that, with making it public, you might find people who also want to do that. And then you're building a little cohort, you're building a little tribe of people that can all support each other and check in and like keep you going on your goal. So I love that, you see so much on, Facebook and things like that, where someone says, all right, goodbye Facebook. Like, I won't ever be on here again. And then like a week later, they're back, like posting something random. And you're like, wait, what happened?
You'll be back.
But you'll be back. But I think like, with that, especially if you ask for help, like, hey, I want to do this. I need help. Who wants to do it with me? Don't be afraid to reach out. And, we talk a lot about finding experts to help. But if you know what you want to do, like just inviting your friends and your family members to be supportive and go along this journey with you, like you're spreading a good idea onto a lot of people, and that can really help with accountability.
Yeah. And you might already have a circle of friends where you don't normally do a certain behavior, but if you mention it, they might be like, you know what, I've been trying to do that too. And it's a struggle for both of you to get started with something maybe, but then you're doing it together and it's a huge victory. And another part of accountability, as we've mentioned, is apps, using technology. So whether it's the Fitbit, the Apple Watch, tracking your steps, tracking your workouts, tracking your food, bringing awareness to intake. I mean, that is huge. And some people, it really depends on the person how good apps are for tracking, like down to the calories. That's a big concern for a lot of patients I work with, just because of mental health or body image or not wanting to restrict. Maybe they have a history of disordered eating patterns. However, writing it down in some way, whether it's a journal on your phone, whether it's a paper journal, numbers aside, can be hugely impactful.
Yeah. You bought me a kitchen scale. And then you also bought those really nice metal scoops that are like cup, half cup, third cup, whatever.
Measuring scoops.
Measuring scoops. Like,
much more fun to use than like plastic cheap ones.
Yeah, that I'd never used ever, outside of like trying to bake a cake at some point in my life. But
have you baked a cake?
I baked a cake when I was a teenager once.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, for my mom, for her birthday. Red velvet cake.
Aww.
The neighbor helped me. But so with that, you can really sort of add to the measuring. And just like you said, I was completely unaware about how much milk I was putting like 1% or 2% in a smoothie sometimes. And I was just pouring some into this, into the cup and like, oh, that's gotta be a cup. Then I measured it and it was like at least half or a third of that.
Why are my smoothies 800 calories? And we're like looking at all the measurements like, whoa.
And they might be even more, right? They might be even more because I wasn't measuring. And when you actually measure stuff, it makes a huge difference. And also that's teaching your brain. You're getting that feedback. Okay, this is a cup. Yeah. Okay, this is the amount of almonds I should eat.
And not just to see calories, but really like, see how much protein you're getting. I mean, we get way less protein than we think unless we're actually trying it and measuring it or, recording it. We often underreport on what we're eating, like the snacks that come in throughout the day, little handful of this. And we a lot of times over-report on like the vegetables and the things we get in, that we're often low on. For a lot of different benefits. So using technology, having that awareness, and it doesn't have to be calorie focused, but maybe you just write it down in a journal, take pictures. Photos is a great like photo journaling for someone who does not want to do the numbers, just seeing what they're eating and how much like in their plates or bowls or things like that, what it looks like, can bring awareness, because you can look back at your day and say, oh, wow, I already had this. Or, oh, I had that. I already had too much of that. Maybe I'm, going to choose something else for my snack.
Mm-hmm. And lastly, we're about to get dark. But the last tip is visualizing and having a daily acknowledgement that one day you're going to die. And and I know that sounds super dark. But actually, according to James Easter in The Comfort Crisis, the Botanese are some of the happiest people on the planet. And part of their daily ritual is going into some deep visualization of the end of their life or their last day on Earth.
Does that make them just so much more grateful every day too?
Yeah. I mean, basically, it's like, don't wait. You have a limited amount of time. And what is really important? What is really important in my life? Do I want to look back on my life and find out, like, remember that I like scrolled Instagram for like 3 hours today, or I watched TV, or I watched this movie? Mm-hmm. Or do you want to like remember that you went outside and were active with your kids, or took your spouse on a hike, or just went for a walk after dinner. And, really thinking about the fact that we just don't have that much time on this earth. And like, as you get older, like, me, I've had a couple like young friends pass away recently, and it's like, gosh, they're like 37 years old and they're, passing away from this or that. And it really does help you realize that like life is so meaningful and so short, and we should seize the freaking day. We should crush our goals. We should figure out things that we want to accomplish and make a plan for those things, because, the idea is that like the cliff is coming for all of us at some point. And do you want to just be walking along and like mindlessly, like not thinking about the cliff, and then all of a sudden you're there? Or if you know that 500 feet ahead of you, there's a cliff, and one day you're going to reach that. Like, you might slow down and like look around a little bit and enjoy the walk a little bit more, if you know that like, hey,
enjoy the journey. Is that what he talks about in the book?
Yeah.
Is that the analogy?
Yeah. The 500-foot cliff. There's a cliff ahead and you're walking toward it, and one day you're going to fall off it. So you might as well like smell the roses along the way and like walk with a friend and
being a
have
role model for your kids, your grandkids, or reaching new goals that you never thought you would even in later in life.
Right. So, I mean, I think those tips are grandiose. Obviously, like employing all of them is going to be a lot of work for a lot of people, but even just adding in a couple of them into your daily routine, or picking something that you want to strive toward in this second half of the year, picking a milestone somewhere in this next half of the year that like, hey, I want to dunk a basketball by October. And like, what are the steps that it's going to take for me to be able to do that? I was thinking like, is there any way I can dunk a basketball? Like, I really want to dunk a basketball. I want to
get out there playing basketball with Bennett every day. I want to try to
dunk a basketball. So, but if it's something like that, like pick something that you're going to work toward and like start going after it.
And it can be one small change that you're adding in. So whether it's practicing something, whether it's a diet change, maybe it's a form of exercise, pick one thing. And then once you get the hang of that habit, like in a few weeks, then maybe, bring it up a notch or add something else in.
Isn't that so funny? Like, I picked something extrinsic, like something I was going to do, and you picked something that was intrinsic, like something that you were going to do sort of just internally on your own. I mean, that's such a difference in the two of us, but it just really paints the picture of that.
Yeah.
Of how you can attack these things from, different viewpoints and still make a difference.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. So we hope some of these tips were helpful, and, it's always important to have goals. So maybe you don't even have one, but it's something to think about to improve your health, to improve your life.
Make a goal.
Let us help you at Chain Effect.
All right. Well, we'd love to hear from you. If you have any questions or you want help identifying a goal, email us at caroline@chaineffect.us or taylor@chaineffect.us, and we'd love to hear from you.
So, all right. Thanks for listening.
Catch you later.
Check you next time.